I just believe that there are enough Republicans in the Senate who are sincere about solving the problem, as opposed to those who want chaos at the border because Donald Trump thinks it's a good election issue, that we can get this passed. But we'll see. We'll have a vote in the next 2 to 3 days to get onto the bill, and that will tell us whether we still have the support we need or whether Donald Trump has prevailed here.
Oh, man, these people. That's Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, who is a co-author of this bill. And if you had any questions about whether or not they were trying to solve the border issue with this bill, or if, mind blown, they're going to try to make this all about Donald Trump once again, I think you could just listen to his words right there. I would like to make it all about Donald Trump. I would like him to get reelected in November so that he could put back into place his policies that had our border much more secure than it is right now. Let's get some expert, not just bloviating opinions like mine. Let's get an expert's thought on this. The director of the Center for Homeland Security and Immigration at America First Policy Institute, also the former chief of policy at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services within the Department of Homeland Security for the Trump administration. Rob Law joins us right now. Thank you so much for being with us here today, especially after this bill has been put out for people to read. Can't wait to hear what you think of it.
Well, thanks for having me on. And this bill is worse than advertised. I was trying to hold off on criticism based off of reports because, the words matter of legislative language. And frankly, this bill institutionalizes the record levels of illegal immigration that we've seen during the Biden administration. And it would actually hinder a President Trump or a future America First president from enforcing the law and truly securing the border. So happy to dig into some of the specifics, but this bill is not the right solution.
One of the things that I've seen either be talked about, this is obviously ink on paper, is what the Biden administration tends to do is streamline the process of people coming in. And the analogy I've used before in the show is it's like the patient is on the table, it's bleeding out, and they're asking for mops and buckets to make sure that it's a clean bleeding out, and as opposed to let's get somebody in here to stop the bleeding. They don't seem to understand that we need to stop the problem in its tracks, or they benefit from the problem status quo. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right that they absolutely do benefit from basically breaking the system, because everyone probably remembers President Trump established the most secure southern border in our nation's history. And on day one, President Biden came in and undid every effective policy and has basically invited this invasion. And so, again, instead of turning back to the proven policies of the Trump administration, the Remain in Mexico policy, the asylum cooperative agreements with the Northern Triangle countries, fully utilizing expedited removal authority, instead of doing all those things that are proven, tried and true, and you know how they work, this bill creates this unnecessarily convoluted and complex and frankly confusing system in which illegal aliens will go through when they will continue to make their fraudulent asylum claims. It will reward them with work permits at a quicker clip than they're currently getting them. And this notion that they're shutting down the border is just absolutely preposterous. It doesn't do that. And as I said at the onset, it institutionalizes a level of illegal immigration that we had never seen in the history of our country before Joe Biden took over.
One of the things you just said there is that this bill, should it become law, would make it more complicated for President Trump or any president to enforce the border. Can you really plain explain that to me, how that would come out of this bill, or maybe what the Democrats are after here?
Sure. So a couple of things. So under current law, as I just mentioned, there's the Remain in Mexico policy, which is you have the ability to make illegal aliens wait in Mexico until they have their asylum claims. This new process would essentially require a President Trump or a subsequent administration to do what's called nationwide catch and release. Basically, allow illegal aliens into the country, cut them loose, and hope that they check in with you periodically while they wait for their case. Secondarily, there is an authority that people may have heard referred to as Section 212F of the immigration laws, and that is a very broad authority. President Trump used it several times to deny the entry of aliens into our country. And if you now have an authority that has a trigger at 5,000 illegal aliens per day before you can even temporarily so-called shut down the border with loopholes, I think a case would be made that is Congress saying that anything less than 5,000 per day, which is the equivalent of 1.8 million illegal aliens a year, is no longer constitutes a crisis, is no longer detrimental, that is de facto acceptable. And so if President Trump wanted to come back in and try to shut down the border with a 212F, I think that, you would have open borders groups that would go to court immediately and try to block that. So you're actually limiting the very powerful tools that are in the law today by creating these new authorities.
We're speaking with Rob Law. He's the director of the Center for Homeland Security and Immigration at the America First Policy Institute. Now, you have a particular set of skills and knowledge and expertise when it comes to policy because you've done this. You were the chief of policy at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services within the Trump administration. So you've got a couple things here that I really want to tap into: actual policy experience and working with Donald Trump and the Donald Trump administration. What do voters, and I'm talking about people like, I don't know if you saw 50 Cent came out and said I know the New York Post reporter, I think he said on Twitter, about the $53 million that New York City is going to invest in prepaid credit cards to immigrants so that they can get the things that they need. And these immigrants who beat these cops in New York City came out and then flipped the double bird to all of America and all of the taxpayers who are funding this no cash bail system. I mean, a lot of people out there having had enough, and people like 50 Cent are out there having public commentary about it. Elon Musk has certainly said a lot about the immigration issues. We are seeing people who don't normally comment on issues specifically like this immigration one paying attention. Talk to me about policy. Should Donald Trump be elected or a Republican be elected? The America First Policy Institute advocacy here for what really can happen and should happen with the problem at the border.
Sure. Well, like I said, as long as this terrible Senate bill does not become law, there's already existing authority to get the job done, to secure the border right away. And rightfully so. American people, every state has been turned into a border state because of the open border policies of Joe Biden over the last 3 years. And so instead of taxpayer dollars going to fund the lifestyle of illegal aliens here, you would put in place proven policies like remain in Mexico, and you would actually allow ICE to do their job. ICE is our immigration enforcement guys on the inside of the country. Right now, they've basically been chained to a desk, told they can barely remove anybody, and it's about 3% of the illegal aliens that have been coming across the border at record numbers that are actually being removed from American communities every year. Just let them start to do their job, and you will start to see that impact. If you cut off all of these incentives, these work permits, all these freebies through these nonprofit groups that basically our taxpayer dollars are being funneled to these groups that are then suing the federal government for the benefit of illegal aliens. And all of those things, President Trump or the next America First president could come in day one, does not need a new piece of legislation from Congress to do all of those. And those are true America First policies right there.
Is there reality? Can we base the response to the people who have already come here in reality that there's actually a catch and deport policy that will have to be put into place and can be manageable in the future once we get that border secure?
So it'll certainly be difficult. It's kind of like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's really what you do is you look at the easiest populations to remove. You have almost 1.5 million illegal aliens who have gone through the entire immigration court system, have received what's called a final order of removal, which means they've exhausted all of their opportunities to contest their deportation, and they still refuse to leave. Those are the people that as soon as ICE were to get a hold of them, you can return them. You have criminal aliens currently sitting in federal and state jails. You could go in and remove them as well. And as ICE is able to do their job, and just as they come across illegal aliens and they partner with state and local law enforcement officials, turn them into a force multiplier, welcome their assistance as opposed to rejecting it, which is what Biden has done, you start to show inroads on that front. I'm not going to suggest that the entire illegal alien population can be removed overnight or in even just a matter of months. But right now, what we do know is that ICE is not doing their job. They are not removing people. And when you don't remove people, that encourages more to come. As you start to remove people, some will remove themselves. And then most importantly, the next wave of legal immigration doesn't come because it's just not worth it anymore when you know that there are actually consequences.
Rob Law, one last question before I let you go. I'm here in St. Louis, but I live across the river in Illinois, and we are a sanctuary state. And I know that ICE or the police, the local police, are not allowed to contact ICE if they understand the status, the legal status of somebody who they are in conflict with is in question. And this is part of that sanctuary state status that Illinois has. I'm sure other states have varying degrees of sanctuary in many of the blue states around the country. Is that legal? And is there something that needs to be done on a federal level that says that states can't choose to disobey these laws that are in conflict with what is going on at a federal level?
Well, you raise a really important point, which is all of these sanctuary policies are in direct violation of the law. Our immigration system is supposed to be a federal policy, a uniform policy across the entire country. And what these sanctuary cities did, mostly during the Trump administration, when you had a president who actually wanted to enforce the law, was they obstructed the ability to enforce our immigration laws. They bragged about it openly. They welcomed illegal aliens and said and marketed that they will protect you from Donald Trump's, deportations. And then all of a sudden, when Biden opens up the border to basically the entire world and all of their resources get drained, now it's suddenly not as fashionable to be a sanctuary city. So really, if these sanctuary cities wanted to do the right thing, they should terminate those policies because they're already unlawful. And I would hope that the next America First administration would come in, bring those jurisdictions to court the way the Biden administration has challenged Texas for just trying to, maintain some sovereignty, cut off federal funds to sanctuary jurisdictions until they return to compliance with federal law. But they are absolutely violating the law. You don't get to pick and choose which aspects of our immigration laws you get to follow.
I'm so glad you explained that because it's very frustrating to see as an Illinoisan myself, Governor J.B. Pritzker complaining about Texas not handling their business when he was very willfully politically inviting this problem onto our doorsteps as taxpayers when Donald Trump was president. What a great way to explain it. We appreciate that. Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to having you back. This issue's not going anywhere. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Of course. Bye-bye.